Yeah. Anyhow, so thank you, Matt. Really appreciate you doing this. We
Sure.
have a wide variety of audience, Matt. I know part of the audience is going to be folks who are entrepreneurs who work with me. Most of them have their full-time jobs and they're just like hustlers. I don't want to call it as hustle because hustle can be taken so many different ways, but
Sure.
they are entrepreneurs in the evening hours. But then there'll be so many folks tuning in who are just moms, dads, kids. So yeah, thank you for doing this with us. I really appreciate that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I thank you for asking me.
Yes. So, yeah, let's launch right into it. I know, Matt, you're pressed on time, but we'll just get started with this. So, give us a little background about yourself, Matt. I've studied you a little bit by now, and it was just like a coincidence reading your article on success.com and then just connecting with you. And once again, thanks for agreeing to do this. But give us a little background about yourself so that your audience knows you a little bit.
Sure, sure. I'm most important. I'm married and have two kids.
Yeah.
I live in St. Louis, where I spent the last 3 days shoveling out from about 10 inches of snow. As you mentioned, I'm a writer. I've been a journalist for, gosh, almost 30 years now. Started out in small town newspapers covering politics. Moved to a sports magazine where I wrote about major sports for about a dozen, 13 years. And then during one of the big layoffs, that has hit the media industry in the last 20 years or so, I was invited to become a freelance writer. So that's my sort of entrepreneurial background. Is I run my own writing business. I've been doing that for just about 9 years now, and I think most entrepreneurs, on the days that it's going good, it's the best thing ever. And on the days that it's not, I'm like, what the hell why are you doing this? So, that's in my experience, at least, that's the central struggle of this life, is
Yeah.
battling the freedom to make your own way in the world with the challenge of making your own way in the world. So that seeps into my writing quite a bit, I think.
Yeah, I love that. I was actually reading one of those books called Entrepreneur Roller Coaster. I think Darren
Great
Hardy.
title.
Yeah, I think it's Darren Hardy, and as it's so apt though. I think he doesn't bring out that idea though. But can you imagine having a roller coaster that does not go up and down? There's going to be no fun.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that's what makes entrepreneurship that lucrative. But a lot of people, I think, jump into being an entrepreneur just for the glamour and the glory because they're looking at the outcome. But the process sometimes is hard. There's a lot of grind involved in it. So yeah,
Yeah. If you're jumping in this for glory,
you're
yeah,
going to be wiped out pretty soon.
you're not going to land where you think. I don't think.
Yeah, it's fun to do. I'm totally with you. It's a lot of fun, brings you a lot of fulfillment. But there are days when you're like, what the heck am I doing? I could just have stayed in that safe corner of a cubicle or just stick with my job and do what I need to do. But anyhow, so Matt, I studied you a little bit, read some of your blogs, your articles, and I see you've been studying some of the successful folks that are out there, some performers, and I'm sure you have a wide variety of experience talking to a lot of successful people, and yourself, you've been doing great. So I want to jump into some questions that I think are apt, just not for entrepreneurs, but for life in general. Because
Mhm.
personally, for myself, sure, entrepreneurship is just a role, but life is what we live.
Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur, I think I'm a little biased. I think we live life on the edge, and I think that's the best way of living.
Yeah.
So the first question I just want to kind of dive into is, I think in one of your blogs you talk about life without adversity is boring,
Yeah. No.
which is kind of a bold statement. And none of us we go out looking for adversity, but that's actually what makes life a little bit more interesting. So do you
Yeah.
want to kind of talk a little bit more about that? How can someone embrace that mindset, not
Yeah.
so that you're looking for adversity, but embrace that mindset and progress?
I would I would actually say that I actually do, not professionally, but in sort of my personal life isn't the right way to put it. In my I write a lot about adventure,
Hmm.
and I absolutely pursue adversity there. There's no doubt, because I discovered when I became a freelance writer, when I became an entrepreneur, that I lacked perseverance, I lacked persistence, I lacked toughness, and it was because my whole career. It's not that I didn't need those things exactly, but I didn't need them very often. And so I discovered when I became a freelance writer and things weren't going so great, I didn't handle that very well.
Hmm.
So one of the ways I have tried to learn toughness and learn perseverance is through physical events. So long and arduous hikes, Tough Mudder competitions. I did a trip. I turned 50 in October, and I sold a story where I hiked 50 miles, biked 50 miles, and canoed 50 miles, all in 5 days in Wisconsin.
Wow.
And the reason I do that is I am absolutely convinced that if you can endure hardship in one area of your life, that teaches you to endure it in another. And I cross apply it all the time. I have a mantra when I'm on either a long hike or a long event or a long anything, basically. It's one more step. You can take one more step. And I apply that in writing all the time. The story that I apply it in my personal life. The most challenging thing that's ever happened to me is I had to deliver my mom's eulogy back in July.
Oh, wow.
And before I gave it, I was just overcome with fear, just so nervous and afraid that this was the last memorial. This was the last things that were going to be said out loud in front of a group about this woman I love so much. And about 2 or 3 hours before it, I reminded myself, you haven't done a hard thing like this before, but you've done hard things. And so instead of one more step, it was one more sentence. I can say one more sentence. And so that's kind of how I approach things is, you can't look too far ahead. If you're running a marathon at mile 12, you can't be thinking about mile 26. You have to be thinking about the next step. And the same goes with writing a story, launching a product, whatever. You can take that next step. That's how I.
Very true. That's very true. Sorry to hear about your mom.
Thank you.
Passing away. So, yeah, that's very true. But while you were trying to explore those areas, like you jumped into freelancing and all these kind of things, and you said you didn't have the perseverance, you didn't have that kind of toughness in you. Weren't you scared getting into that?
Terrified.
World?
Yeah, I was terrified all the time. Yeah, I woke up one night, the middle of the night, it was 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And just racked with every day, waking up racked with fear. And this voice spoke to me, and this sounds goofy, but it absolutely happened. And the voice said, if you don't calm down in 20 years, you're going to regret not just your career, but your whole life.
Wow.
And as if that wasn't clear enough, the voice said exactly the same thing back to back 2 times. I wish to say I woke up a changed man, and that the next day I was just fine. That's not true. But over the years, I did realize that, that living in fear like that was not, I was over exaggerating everything. I mean, I was not in any real danger of losing my house or losing my family or anything. All I was going to do was fail. And, do I want to fail? No, failing sucks. I'm not going to say that it doesn't, but it's not the end of the world either. And that's another thing I do in my adventure stuff is I do things I've never done before so that I'll be terrible at them. So I get used to being terrible at things, but then also you learn 2 things: that you can improve at something. And also that, if you fall off the surfboard, if you fall off the snowmobile, if you fall off your bike, you get back up and you get back on and you try again.
But was it always like that for you? Let's say if you fall off something, and weren't you having that inner chatter with you saying, am I good at this? Should I get back on it? Or should I just pursue something else? How did you overcome some of those thoughts?
Yeah. I think I have a different view on imposter syndrome than most people. Frankly, I kind of like having imposter syndrome. That's what drives me to do better.
Keeps you grounded. Keeps you sometimes grounded, makes you feel.
Who thinks they know everything? People who are arrogant and cocky on social media, and they are throwing off annoying opinions as if they know everything. They could use a dose of imposter syndrome. So I try to remember that a lot. Like when I'm in a creative business and I write stories, and my career is only going to go as far as my stories are. Okay, this isn't entirely true. It's mostly true that my career is going to be based largely on how good of a job I do on my stories. If I go to my stories telling myself, oh, you're great, you're perfect, that sentence is awesome, That's not the way that you get better. You get better by examining yourself, by doubting whether that's the best you can do, so that you work on it to get better. Now, there's a point where that becomes unhealthy, and I don't mean to go there, but I think the world needs less confidence, not more.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I like that. That's a different take on that. Needs less confidence than more confidence.
Yeah.
No, you're true. I think a lot of times, and I work with people who have like I said, they have full-time professions and they are trying to create something outside of their full-time profession, and none of us are gifted that way. Like, I'm an engineer by training. This is a nightmare of thing for me. Like, if you had to say, KD, 8 years back, we're gonna have a conversation, I'm like, converse what? Like, we can chat on through the keyboard. I don't want to face you because I was horrible. So I actually have a business coach and a mentor. I thank him and many of them who just coached me through just overcoming that fear. I know you made a statement about failure sucks. Yeah. I remember my coach making a statement. He's like, just make sure you just fail and say, I'm going to get up one more time and just do it one more time and just get punched on your face one more time. It's going to be okay. And the sixth punch is not going to feel that hard. And you're like, I survived. I can move on from there. I can move on from there.
I am the leader of, I jokingly call it an international movement. And it's an exercise thing that we call Make America Burpee Again.
Oh, I read that. I read about that.
Okay, so a burpee it's an exercise where you literally fall down on your face and then you get back up, and it's a perfect metaphor for how we live our lives, right? You fall down, you get back up. You fall down, you get back up. You fall down, you get back up. That's what life is like. Life is not fall down, get back up. The rest of your life is perfect. At least it's not for me. It's not for any of my friends. And so if we sort of acknowledge that and embrace it a little bit and be okay. If you had jumped in, you were just saying how like scary it is to do something like this. If you just jump right in without like self-examining to see how can I get better at this, that's just not that's not the way that the world works. We should allow ourselves to say, you know what, I've turned in stories that stink. There's no question about it. But I've also, through hard work, turned in some stories that don't stink. And, like young writers, they'll say, well, how do you write a great story? The way that you do it is you write 500 bad ones.
Oh, good one. That's a good one right there.
Right. And then you write a couple of okay ones. And then eventually you'll write a good one. And then eventually, hopefully you'll write a great one. But, this idea that everything we are ever going to do has to be perfect and we have to have full confidence in everything we do, that's just fiction. That doesn't have any semblance to the real world.
And while you were talking about the burpees, it's like a bunch of us doing burpees together. When one of us falls down on the face and you try to get up, some of us look clumsy.
Yep.
And it's amazing. The people who are doing the burpees along with us, they'll cheer for that individual saying, yeah, you can do it.
You can do it.
The guy who's standing outside as a spectator, he's the one taking videos and posting on TikTok saying, look at these guys, they're stupid. Look at how clumsy they are. And sometimes we as individuals, while we are performing, we are so worried about what the world thinks. What is that guy going to say? Yep. And we never deliver our best. I think that's an apt example of, burpees is like keeps you grounded, keeps you right next to the ground. And just that's what life is. Fall down 9 times and get up 10th time.
Yep. Yeah. I agree 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So moving along from there, some of the articles, you talk about chaos and you talk about pacing yourself and people having this to-do list that keep growing. And I personally have felt, more you are into performing, more of a performer you want to just challenge your limits. You're like, let me see how much more can I put on my to-do list, which may sometimes get into this place of being unhealthy. Any advice, any tips you've got by just studying success, just experimenting things yourself?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it's a learning process, obviously, that, I think I'd rather bite off more than I can chew than find out later I could have done more. That's for sure. I'm going to err on the side of over challenging myself, but I'm not sure that that's the best way to do it. I just know that that's how I roll. Well, that's a good question. I think, set, realistic goals. What can I, how much time do I have? How much time is this going to take? And how many hours are there in a week that I'm willing to devote to this? And I think one of the best things that we can learn as entrepreneurs especially early on, is to say no.
Mm.
It's extremely hard if somebody offers you, they want to buy something from you, some service, I'm a writer, they want to buy a story from me. Tell them, no, sorry, I can't do that. That price isn't good enough. That project isn't right for me. I'll never forget. I had a mentor. I used to live in Charlotte, and I had a mentor who owned his own software company.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought going in that our worlds were so different that I couldn't learn anything from him. And boy, was I wrong. That was one of the dumbest things I've ever thought. But we were talking, and he just sort of, cavalierly mentioned some client he had that morning that he fired. Then he just kept going, but I'm like, well, hold on a second, back up. What? You fired a client? Oh yeah, they're total pain in the butt. They asked for a million things that were either outside of the contract or calling me every single day, asking me the same questions. I just finally decided they weren't worth the effort. They were costing me money to have them as a client, so I fired them. And that was I keep learning that lesson, but it was a big lesson that just because somebody wants to work with you doesn't mean you have to want to work with them, and that's a valuable way. So then you can create tiers that, okay, these are my untouchables. I'm going to say yes because they pay good, they're good to work with, the visibility is good, whatever that criteria is. And then you'll have some that are in the middle and some that you're sort of hoping to move up. But those ones at the bottom, don't be afraid to excise them in pursuit of more ones up here.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, because we all end up having some clients, or we end up having some people in our life who are just going to drag us back. And we feel, because we are performers, we take it as a challenge, like, oh, I can bring this guy along, or I can bring this client along.
Yeah.
And that one client, that one person, or the group of people actually stops you from your real success, where you could have taken that same energy and run with people. Like I have a mentor, I have a coach. He makes this statement. He says, I would rather run with one versus drag 100.
Yeah, I wrestle with that one a little bit. I think there is, I think I'm old enough now to feel some mentoring obligation, to feel some, I can help that person. There's a difference, right? That if you can, and I don't think you weren't saying this, but if you can help that person, then you're willing to sacrifice a little bit in order to help them. If it's a leech situation where they're just sucking you dry, no, that's not the case. But if it's
like, you match my pace, let's say you take one step, I'll take maybe two for you and with you.
Right.
But first step comes from you.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to just carry somebody on their back for the rest of their life, So, yeah. And that reminds me, Matt, you were talking a little bit about, in your conversation, you talked about, this is what works for Matt. And you have made that statement a couple of times, which I think is so crucial, because today I think we have so much of information on every subject. Like how to sleep. I think you can Google, even learn how to pee properly. There'll be 20,000 different people writing stuff about it, and which is so crazy these days. And we can be vitally confused because somebody says you wake up at 4 a.m. and someone says you should work late in the night. There's a blog that you have about, even how to sleep and when to sleep and all that. Pacing yourself and figuring out systems that work for you, what works for you. Do you want to touch upon that a little bit? Because I think it's so vital, so important.
Yeah, it's there's a couple of things I've learned about that over the years. I used to very early on when I was freelance writing, if somebody wanted me to write for them, I said yes and figured out how later.
Nice.
And I think that's good when you're starting out. But now I have a handful of silos that I write in, and unless I have to, I try not to go outside of those for a couple of reasons. One would be I have a brand, and I want to stick in that, and I don't want to venture too far out of it. But two is, okay, so I write a lot about NASCAR. And to be able to do the kind of NASCAR writing that I do took me a long time to become an expert at that. And same with all my other subjects. But now I've put so much work into that all the time I would spend to get up to speed on a particular subject, I don't want to spend that if I don't have to, right? So if somebody asks me to write a story about, let's say, soccer, okay, I don't know anything about soccer. And so the amount of time it's going to take me just to get up to speed in order to then go write the story, it's going to take me twice as much time. And in terms of pacing myself, I've also just learned I have a certain amount of time and emotional and creative energy. And it's just a sort of an instinct now over years of practice that I know if I cross that, I'm going to burn out or my work is going to suffer. And so, yeah, that's it. And that, again, that's knowing what you're good at is pretty important. Knowing what you're willing to stretch on is important. And just saying, you know what, it's my job, not my life. And I don't want to fry myself. No, there are times when I'll be passionate enough about a story that you say, all right, this is worth it. But yeah, that's your time is finite.
That's true. Your time is finite, your energy is finite, your emotional bank, you can't just keep withdrawing from it all the time. And throw in all this mix of, being an entrepreneur, throw in this mix of, friends and family relationships and all the stuff that goes on around you. And then we have to devote our time to politics, and then we have to watch some games, and then we go up and down, and some of us are invested in stock market, and then it goes up, we go up, and otherwise we go down. So I had to learn early on, even for myself, to just keep my life simplified. I didn't put on too much onto my life. It was just about my full-time job, my business, and it was about my family. I actually didn't care about so many things around me. And that actually helped me quite a bit, for sure.
Yeah. It's you put that very well. So I was a sports writer for a long time.
Yeah.
And so at that time, it was part of my job to pay a lot of attention to football and to pay a lot of attention to baseball, because I was writing very much about both of them. It was part of my job. And, I'm a man in America. Those things interest me. But now that I don't have to write about them anymore, and I have daughters who are 15 and 12, nice, and a wife, and none of them care one whit about sports at all. I haven't watched a football game, and I haven't watched, I've watched maybe an hour this year, and that's because I was with my family back in Michigan, where they watch a lot.
Yeah.
I haven't watched, baseball in years.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are things that
don't you worry you're missing out on stuff, Matt? Because a lot of people have this fear of missing out. I'm going to miss out on a game. I'm going to miss out on that movie.
Nope. I fear I'm going to miss out on my taking my daughters to the park, taking my daughters sledding, whatever. No, I've what's the best way to say that? I was involved in it enough to know that fear of missing out, you're really not missing anything. Now, granted, there are situations I've been in before where, okay, so I live in St. Louis, where baseball is king. All right. Baseball is the most important sport. And when I first moved here, if you were engaged in a conversation with other men of my age, if you didn't know at least something about the Cardinals, that's the baseball team, you would be left out of the conversation. So there is a little bit of that. But I think, I've thought about this before, that the friends that I happen to have now, they're not interested in that. So then I don't have to be, you know what I mean?
It's amazing. Like, you attract people in your life based on your values. And I think your value today is your family, your time with your kids and wife. So if somebody doesn't like what you do, the way you spend your time, chances are they're not going to walk into your inner circle. Yeah, this is who we are as humans.
I have a good friend who, I think he's quoting James Clear when he says this, is join groups where your desired behavior is the established behavior.
Yeah.
And so, so you surround yourself and also immerse yourself with people who have shared interests. And again, that I don't want to overstate that, because you can become so cloistered that you are, ignorant of the rest of the world. But I don't want to hang out with guys who spend every Friday and Saturday night out at the bar. I'm not going to do that. That doesn't interest me. I don't want to, have every conversation be about the left tackle.
And you're so unapologetic about it, right? You're like, I don't want to spend that time.
Yeah,
with
that doesn't interest me. So
because sometimes we end up living somebody else's life. We do so much to please others. We end up hurting our own family, our own careers, our own ventures, because just what would Joe think about me? If Joe thinks so much about you, then Joe should actually contribute in your personal life and success versus judging you.
Yeah. I don't care what Joe thinks. Joe can bite me.
I hope there is nobody Joe listening to all this. I'll be happy.
Not you, Joe, the other Joe.
The other Joe. Anyhow, so just building upon this, as we are, we've been talking for a minute over here. Something that I think you were quoting James Clear, and he talks about this habit. So let's dive into it a little bit. I did read a little bit about some of your blogs on daily habits, and do you think they're important? How can someone go about, just putting together some good rituals in their life, if I can say that way?
That's a great question. One I wrestle with that all the time. I am trying. I would not say that I am the world's best example of that, but I have in the last few years established a few that I think are beneficial. You mentioned sleep. I would say, I mean, there's no question that research shows that sleep is a major issue across every age, every gender, everything. It sounds silly and it sounds like something your mom would tell you, but establish good bedtime habits, go to bed at the same time as often as you can, and wake up at the same time as often as you can. And that's extremely helpful.
I'll have to listen to this 3 times from you again. Wow, the sleeping habits, not my strength.
It really, I mean, I know it sounds silly. It's like, have a bedtime. Like, I'm an adult. Don't tell me to have a bedtime, right? But I'm telling you, I started a project last summer where it was for a story about wearable technology, wearable devices. Okay. And so I did, and I had some sleep issues. I had insomnia and just an inability really to feel rested when I woke up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would encourage your listeners to look up sleep hygiene and what that means and how to put it in practice. Short version is, don't drink don't drink very much. Don't eat close to bedtime. Don't eat spicy foods close to bedtime. The single most important rules are go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time every night. Shut off your screens as soon as possible. You will not, I try very hard not to be on my phone or any other device after dinner. And I just sort of have a peaceful routine I try to get into before bed. Waking up, I have some mornings I get up early and do a pretty vigorous workout. And if I don't do that, I do some spiritual reading, either the Bible or a theological book.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have social media on my phone, just so that's not there. I quit Twitter. I'm limiting, Facebook and other social media as much as I can. But, and I'm pretty fortunate that I have a wife who is very passionate about healthy eating. And so all of my bad eating habits, I've been married 22 years. She taught me out of my bad eating habits a long time ago. Again, I'm not a saint on any of that, but I don't stuff myself full of, crap every day. So I don't have to overcome that. So, some of the good habits are really not having bad habits.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Some of the good habits, I'm just not having the bad habits and not just continue to repeat those bad patterns, Like my life is a little different than yours, Matt, but over a period of time, I think we figure out what works for us.
Yeah.
Like workout is part of my regimen, but I just sometimes I'm not able to do it in the morning, but I find at least 3 to 4 days a week when I can just work out, because I personally believe when I can break some of my challenges in the workout, I can break some of my business and my life challenges much easily. It just gives me that energy, like, I could conquer the weights. I think I can conquer life a little bit.
I could not possibly agree more. That's been one of the biggest things I've learned as an entrepreneur is the relationship between those two things.
Yeah. And then also, I do my meditations and all that. And I think somewhere eating is something I'm working on myself, but I do have some habits that just gets my day started proper. Like I listen to a good podcast in the morning. I don't read news articles and all to start my day with. It can really get you somewhere in different frame of mind.
I have two things I want to add there. I have a mantra that I try to remember to repeat to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, what do you want to think about today? And the reason I say that to myself is that if you look at social media, and to some degree the headlines of the day, CNN, I would not turn on cable news for all the money in the world. I literally never, ever, ever watch it. And that's because that just fills your mind with junk.
Yeah.
And so I try to remind myself, what do you want to think about today? And that's what I read. And I have a question for you. I hear from people all the time who are passionate podcast listeners. I can't figure out how to listen to a podcast and not like shut my brain off and stop listening for 5 minutes at a time. And then I realize, oh crap, I don't even know what they're talking about right now.
Yeah.
I can't figure out how to, this sounds dumb, but I don't know how to listen. Like, how do you,
Man, I don't worry that much. I'm a simple guy. I say at least something is better than nothing. So if 30 minutes of conversation, I got 5 minutes in, I'm like, I got my stuff for today. I'm good. Because I'm going to come back and repeat the same activity, not the same podcast, but next day. I used to actually feel pretty small like that. I used to be like, man, I wish I had my wife's memory. Like, she's got a photogenic memory. She scans through the book and she's like, I remember. James Clear book I would have read like 3 times. I still don't remember much out of it, but I remember one thing about habit stacking, and I'm like, 1% is better than 0. So I never beat myself up for that. That's just my 2 cents on it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think of a podcast like I think of a book, and if I didn't read 5 pages, I'd have to go back and read those 5 pages. So if I don't hear 5 minutes, I feel like I have to go back and listen. And
that's how we are wired differently, That's how we are unique as humans. I just don't care. I let it roll. I'm like, I got my 5 minutes in today. That's good. Okay. These guys had good fun for the next 30 minutes. That's great. I might
have to steal that from you. Stop caring about whether I actually heard it, heard every word.
I charge royalty for that, Matt.
What's that?
I said I charge royalty for that. I'm just messing with you. So let's bring this down to conclusion, Matt. I know you've been studying success. You've been writing for NASCAR and so many other different magazines. Give me your top 2 or 3 power tips that could just help entrepreneurs scale heights, get to the level of success that they want to get to. Any power 2 or 3 different tips you might have for all of us today.
Yeah, I would say, I was wondering if you're going to ask a question like that. And I was trying to think of the experience, the people. I interviewed so many successful athletes over the years, and they're successful for the same reason entrepreneurs are successful. And I would say that it's a combination of 3 things. One is, frankly, talent. Are you good at the thing that you're trying to do? That's part of it. 2 is practice. That, the example I use all the time is Albert Pujols, who was the first baseman for the Cardinals, as naturally gifted as an athlete as you're ever going to see, who also worked harder than anybody. He was the hardest worker and the most talented. And then guess what happened? He became one of the best in history. And, luck is a factor too. I'm not sure luck is always the right word, because sometimes luck is just opportunity meeting hard work, right? But, just being in the right time at the right place, and, taking advantage of the situation. But certainly there's no substitute for the combination of talent and hard work. I mean, that's as simple as it can possibly be. But those are the two things that make people successful. We have outliers who are the super outliers, I guess you maybe say, are also, somewhat lucky. Like, I don't know what you would say Mark Zuckerberg was lucky in, inventing, if that's the right word, Facebook, but he was lucky to be inventing it at the time that he did, and that the circumstances fell the way that they did. So there's some luck involved, but
it's so funny. I used to be so jealous of Mark Zuckerberg just sitting in my room. I was like, man, I wish I had to do Facebook stuff. And then I was reading about Facebook, the journey of Facebook, and somebody quotes when he's like, Facebook got evaluated for some millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, and everybody in the board of director pressurized him, and he was barely in his 20. And he's like, everybody's pressurizing me to sell Facebook. That was the hardest 2 weeks of my life. And he's like, as a 20-year-old, it was so hard for me to say no to all these grown, smart individuals saying, I'm not selling. And you know what? After that, I respect him a little bit. I'm like, man, I would have sold. I would have been like, 250 millions. Man, I'm out of here. Give me 250.
Yep. See you later.
See you later. But it's amazing. So I respect him for that. But sure, luck has its place. Talent has its place. Confidence, hard work. I think it's all culmination of all that. Yeah, definitely. Matt, I know we're right at time. Thank you for letting me steal 30 minutes from your family time. I know Sunday is your time for family. I really appreciate this. And I'm sure all the viewers who got a chance to listen to you, this must have been phenomenal for them. So that's all for today. Any plans for Sunday? What are you doing after this?
That's a good question. There is a unique NASCAR race on today that I will probably watch if my daughter tried hard enough, she might be able to talk me into take her sledding for the third time in 4 days. And I've actually got some writing to do. I'm working on a story about adventure racing, which applies everything we just talked about in terms of the physicality and applying that to the real world. So that's a fun story to write.
Yeah, that's fun. That is fun. Yeah. And I hope your daughter was listening to this and she can persuade you for going sledging. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
All right, Matt. Thank you for everything. We'll be in touch. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.